Tell me if this has ever happened to you. There is some looming task that you know you need to get done. Maybe it's a paper you need to write for school, or like a report or presentation for work, or maybe it's just putting laundry away because you got people coming over later. And you know that this is a time-sensitive matter, and you're very aware that every second that you are not doing it, your window is shrinking. The amount of time you have left to do this thing is going down, and that stresses you out. And so your inner voice, your narrative, goes from encouraging to urging to nagging to frustrated, maybe even eventually to bullying or abusive. So you hear like, hey, let's do that laundry now. Hey, you should really start doing that laundry now. If you don't start doing that laundry now, you might not have time. You may not get this done. Get up off your butt and do your laundry. If you don't do your laundry right this very second, you are just proving to yourself what a worthless failure you are and how right everyone who has ever judged and criticized you was. And this gradual escalation of the narrative does not produce any action. In fact, it seems to producing the opposite. The more pressure you feel, the more stress you feel, the more the urgency mounts, the heavier your body feels. And the more you just kind of sink down into the couch or chair or bed. And the second, it may not even be like a voice, but there's the second thing inside of you that is responding to this pressure. And it's just saying, no, I can't, I won't, I'm not going to. And this inner battle continues, and all of the energy goes to the battle itself, and nothing actually happens. I want you to know that what I just described is not a you thing. That is not a uniquely you struggle or pattern. It is also not confirmation that you are lazy or stupid or broken or worthless. In fact, although this will be very frustrating to hear, that is actually your brain working correctly. Don't shoot the messenger. I find it very annoying too. But our brains are built to have what a curvilinear response to stress. In other words, stress in this context, we could basically define it as like, how much do you care about this thing? And if you care very little, then your motivation will be very low and you will probably not do the thing. Or if you do the thing, you will probably not do the thing well because it doesn't seem important. You don't see the urgency. It doesn't seem like a good use of your resources. And to a degree, stress does help us. We have to see value in things. We have to feel like the time and energy that I put into this will produce something worthwhile. So some amount of stress is good for us, and we learn that at some point, and that's where we get into trouble. Because too much stress, caring too much about something, attaching too high the stakes to it, actually starts to shut us down because it activates our fight or flight response. So your emotions, your fight or flight response, and your motivation all come from a part of your brain called the midbrain. The midbrain is not what we would consider smart in typical terms. Toddlers have pretty fully developed midbrains. Dogs have pretty fully developed midbrains. And I'm not saying toddlers and dogs are not smart. I am saying that toddlers and dogs are probably not equipped to self-regulate the inner optimal level of stress to maximize their motivation. They're not good at that. Your midbrain doesn't evolve much from toddler state. It doesn't have critical thinking. It doesn't have long-term planning. It's very reactive and it's very instinctual. And so we all have this built-in safety mechanism that if something feels like life or death, or like this is an incredibly high-stakes situation, that doesn't get the best out of us. That doesn't make us want to go out there and do it and do an awesome job at it. It makes us want to either push back against it and say, that's too much pressure, you need to back off, I can't do that, or run away from it. Just avoid the situation entirely. And when you heap pressure after expectation, after judgment, after shame on top of yourself, you inadvertently trigger your fight or flight response in your own midbrain, and you either push back against your own pressure that you've put on yourself, or you avoid. You isolate, you flee, and whether you get a fight response or a flight response, the end result is pretty much the same. You don't get the thing done. We are not, in my opinion, supposed to be in fight or flight all the time. And yet that is the reality that many of us are facing. Life is stressful. The world is a stressful place. And I am generally of the belief that the majority of us who are struggling to be productive in any context are not struggling because our stress is too low, but because our stress is too high. There is a principle in industrial organizational psychology, or psychology of the workplace, called the Yerkes-Dodson Law that articulates this. And I'll put it up on the screen so you can see the graphic here. And it basically says what I just said. Low stress equals low productivity. Moderate stress equals high productivity. High stress, once again, loops back down to low productivity because you're overwhelmed, because the stakes are too high, because it feels life or death, and you just can't make yourself do it. And remember that this comes from your midbrain, and the midbrain is illogical. So you might be thinking, Scott, it's just laundry. How on earth could I feel like laundry is a life or death situation? And it's not literal, but if your brain connects some task to a deeply held negative belief system about yourself, and you feel like if I don't get the laundry put away, I am a worthless human being that does not deserve love and does not deserve value and does not deserve respect, yeah, that's going to kind of feel like life or death to you because it's very hard to live without those things. And we do this. We attach simple, mundane tasks to like the deepest, harshest, most damaging judgments possible of ourselves. And then we get stuck and then we shut down. So you can clearly see on this graph that low productivity interacts with stress not once, but twice. What that means is anytime you're struggling to get something done or do it well, there are two possible explanations for that, not one. You either care too little or you care too much. I think in general, human beings care too much about these kind of mundane things. But I also think, or perhaps I should say know, that if you are living with any chronic mental health condition, especially an anxiety disorder or a mood disorder, but really probably any of them, your default position for virtually everything is to take it too seriously, make it too big of a deal, and care too much. And this is me talking to me. I hope that didn't sound mean. That's what my brain does. And so that's how I know it. I think everything is like a huge deal all the time. I think that if I don't brush my teeth, I'm a loser. These thoughts are still in my head. I have to fight back against them in order to not buy in to these unhelpful belief systems that I have internalized for whatever reason. So what this means for you practically is that when you are struggling to get something done, the first thing you need to do is figure out why. Is it because I care too little, or is it because I care too much? Because if we make the default assumption that it's always because I care too little, then we're just going to keep turning that pressure up on ourselves and actually probably push us further and further off this cliff, basically, and shut ourselves down because of the high level of stress that we feel. So first, figure out, is it too low or is it too high? If you determine, I'm actually having a hard time doing this because I have internalized a maladaptive degree of stress. And I keep saying it's you. I know for some of you, a lot of your stress might come from other people's expectations. We'll talk about that in a second. So there's a presumption there. But if you identify that you have put a maladaptive degree of stress and expectations on yourself to do this thing and do it well, paradoxically, and very frustratingly, the way that you increase your motivation and increase your productivity and increase your output is by decreasing expectations and decreasing stress. That could mean taking things off your to-do list today. That could mean setting a lower bar for yourself on certain tasks. That could mean just realizing like it's not that deep, it's laundry. And one day of laundry really does not say anything about you. And I know you say, well, it's not just one day, it's a pattern. Yeah, it's a pattern because of this. It's a pattern because laundry feels like life or death to you because you've internalized maladaptive belief systems. So that pattern can be broken by correctly understanding the Yerkes-Dodson law. It's not a reflection of you being a failure. It's a reflection of your brain having this inborn survival response because you're a mammal. That's what it is. That's how we're designed. The exact mechanisms through which you reduce the stress you're putting on yourself are going to vary from person to person and situation to situation. So I can't tell you exactly what to do here, but I can give you a metaphor that I know you'll understand, which is it's ultimately a very familiar process, a very similar process to trying to get yourself to fall asleep. I'm sure you've experienced those sleepless nights where you just try to like brute force it. You're constantly reminding yourself, I'll be so tired tomorrow if I don't sleep now. I only have 5 hours left, etc. You just keep increasing the pressure. And just like productivity, relaxation and sleep is also not something that responds well to high levels of stress. And so that ultimately keeps you awake. When you finally end up falling asleep at night, it's not because you told yourself you needed to. It's actually usually when you like back off and start thinking about something else. And what you're actually doing there is, rather than trying to force yourself to sleep, you are trying to create the conditions that are conducive to sleep. And when your brain finds itself in the conditions that are conducive to sleep, it will fall asleep. I really believe productivity is the same way. It's not brute forcing yourself and putting yourself in a vice grip and cranking it more and more and more to try to get yourself to do it. It's creating circumstances and environments and situations in your life that just make you want to do stuff without having to be told what to do. It's not micromanaging yourself and not making the stakes so high for everything, and basically just remembering your why, your reasons. Why do I think this is valuable? Why do I want to do this? Why do I want this outcome? Why do I like this? What positive thing in my life am I moving towards? And focusing less on the negativity and the harshness and the connotations with the negative belief systems, and just, what am I moving towards? What do I want out of this? What good will come if I do this? And trying to just cut it off there. And also reminding yourself, assuming that this is true, because I'm not big on just empty affirmations, that you can do it. That you have the skills to do it, that you've done this in the past, that you've done this well in the past, or at least you've done something similar in the past. You need encouragement, you need reassurance, and you need rest. Not literally rest, but like relaxation. You need someone, which is you, to just back off a little bit, to just dial it down a notch. And when you do that, your productivity will more often than not actually go up. Now, if a lot of your pressure is coming from other people, that's a trickier thing to deal with because we don't have agency over other people. We can't just make them back off. You can tell them about the Yerkes-Dodson Law and maybe they'll understand and maybe they'll take it seriously. But the reality is other people don't know how much stress you're under. Like even people that love you and care about you, they don't really know. And there's two reasons they don't know. One is they don't see you all day long. And a lot of your stress is invisible because a lot of your stress comes from you and your narrative and other people can't see that. The second reason is they have a lot of stress too. Like that's really my belief is like we're all out here feeling this and we're all dealing with our own crap. And so expecting someone to be that in tune with you that they know how to modify their approach to you based on how they think you feel might happen once every now and then. You can't count on it. This is mostly your job to regulate your own stress level and try to keep yourself in that sweet spot. Try to keep yourself in that mid-range, even if the majority of your stress does come from other people, because we just don't have a way to control that. You can't titrate that. Now, there's one other thing I want to say about this too. In this piece of content so far, my entire focus, my whole emphasis here has been on you and how other people's stress affects you. But we are sometimes the perpetrators in this problem. And it's also important to use this information to inform our relationships with other people. I am sure I've done this to people as a parent, as an employee, as a spouse, maybe even as a therapist. Even though I know this and have known about this thing for a decade, when I see someone not doing something or not doing something very well, my natural response is that person doesn't care. I better make him care more. And sometimes that is exactly the last thing that person needs. And sometimes when we can help somebody dial back that stress level a little and say, hey, you don't actually have to do all of this right this very second. Or if you don't get it done, it doesn't really say anything about you other than that maybe you're stressed and tired. It's not confirmation of the deeply held belief system that you've had since you got bullied when you were 6 and that person called you a name. Like it's laundry. When we can help other people back off of that stress, that can be a wonderful gift that we give to people. So don't only use this information for you. Try to also use this with other people. Because again, I am generally of the opinion that there are far more of us who struggle because we care too much than who struggle because they care too little. As always, I hope this content helps. If it does, I hope you'll consider returning to this channel. I post regularly, and I will literally never run out of ideas because I'm crazy. And so I have to battle my own brain every day, and that's where most of my ideas come from. Take care, and I'll see you next time.